by thanking Uncle Shane Phillips for his welcome this morning and making us feel welcome as family on Gaddigel country. I'd also like to thank all our magnificent young warriors for the future for coming up in their traditional dress and sharing their culture with us. I would like to start by acknowledging the Gaddigel people of the Yora Nation and pay respect to their elders, past, present and future. And I'd be honoured to do it in the ancient language of the Remengeri people. I've had the great honour and privilege of going through ceremony with our Remengeri brothers, and we actually took their language to Gallipoli and did ceremony in Gallipoli in traditional dress, in Nargan, with stick and didgeridoo, idaki, with dari and kulap and thrum and warrap. So our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, our men in uniform, dressed in traditional dress. It was a great honour for us to stand on the soil where our ancestors fought and died so we can enjoy freedom. Nanyara, Nanyara, Napno Kilin, Yundial Corn and Yundial Meme, Gaddigel Yora, Apo, Gaddigel Yora, Rui, Nanyara, Nabnan Kari Wallen, Yundial Corn and Meme, Rundi and Achai, Nanyara. Ladies and gentlemen, I've just paid respect in language to our traditional landowners, the elders of this land, both past, present and future. I also want to take this opportunity to acknowledge so many of our tribes and clans from Australia and the Torres Straits and the people who represent them, and in particular our elders who've come here to share with us today from all our great nations, and pay respect to your ancestors and your elders, past, present and future. But I also acknowledge with us our families and friends of people whose origin started in another country, somewhere else in the world. And I pay respect with most sincerity to your ancestors and elders. I'd like to officially welcome all our VIPs and our guests and our elders. His Excellency General, the Honourable David Hurley, ACDSC retired, and Mrs Hurley, the Right Honourable Lord Mayor, Clover Moore, the Honourable Tanya Piblisek, MP, the Honourable Linda Burney, MP, and in particular our guest, Mr Nicholas Crozier, Consul General of France, Miss Linda Detweiler, Acting Consul General, US Consulate General, Mr Melih Karakar, Consul General for the Republic of Turkey, all our distinguished guests, all our elders, all our brothers and sisters, and all our boys and girls. And those who can't, respectfully ask you to remain seated. I'm going to invite Jessica and Lara Tijon to come up and sing the National Anthem for us.
Our Belinda and I to join you again in this very important ceremony on a day of national significance to Australia. Could I begin by thanking Uncle Shane for his welcome to country, and I join with him in acknowledging the Gaddigel people as the custodians of this beautiful part of our country, and I thank them for the way they've cared for it for generations, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. This service over its life of about 14 to 15 years has played a very important role in the history of this country. It has enabled us to reconnect and rediscover an important part of our history that I think we had often neglected or were ignorant of, and that is the treatment of Aboriginal servicemen and women, particularly servicemen, when they came back from the First World War, the discrimination they received back in country that they had left behind whilst they were in uniform. It's a story of reconnection, reconnecting with our history, reconnecting and correcting a situation that had existed in the past. And over recent years, with the Council, the government, steps have been taken to recognise, particularly in Sydney and New South Wales, that contribution and try to right that wrong. It's been a personal journey for me as well, because it has been a story of connection. And I want to thank the Babana Men's Group and their leadership here for providing me with an insight into my own life story that I didn't know. 4 years ago at this ceremony, after I spoke for the first time as Governor, before I sat down, Pastor Ray asked me to come back, and he presented me with a frame with 3 photographs in it. One with me in uniform when I was the Chief of the Defence Force, one with a group of 30-odd World War I soldiers in their uniform, and one was a photocopy of an enlistment document for one James Andrew Hurley for the AIF in the First World War.
That is Mr. Marsh. I think she's been here longer than me, and I started this thing. We love her, respect her. The Honourable Tanya Pivasak, MP, Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mark, for doing such a wonderful job as MC again. I also want to thank Shane for his beautiful welcome to country earlier. This day gets more and more meaningful and better every year, and I just want to again thank the fantastic musical performance that we had just a moment ago, and both the young women who sang our national anthem here and Julia, who sang at the community centre before we marched. How beautiful is it to hear our national anthem sung in language? I actually find it so very moving to be here when 60,000 years of continuous culture is shared with me, with this community, with this country. So thank you to all of you who've worked so hard to put together today. Thank you to our performers. It's just magnificent to see all of you again. We celebrated in the last few years the centenary of the First World War, and each of the years that marked 100 years since the beginning of the war, 100 years since the second year, 100 years since the end of the war, we discovered more and more about our history, the history of the First World War. But I think the Governor's comments today and Mark telling us that he didn't know about the service of some of his forebears tells us something more. It tells us that we have to continue to uncover the history of this country and the history of the service of our First Nations people to this country. There's so much that we don't know, so much that we don't know, so much that we still have to discover. 104 years ago, a young man was killed in Gallipoli. He was called Trooper Peter Zeisser, and he came from Ultimo. Except we don't know for certain that his name was Peter Zeisser, because 104 years ago, 105 years ago, Indigenous Australians weren't supposed to sign up to join the Defence Forces. Many lied to join up. He may have lied about his name. We've seen so much of this history uncovered in the last few years, and yet so much that we still don't know. There were 2 men who grew up in Ulladulla Aboriginal Camp, as it was called then. They moved to Redfern. They were called Ernest and Louis Lacey, and they enlisted in 1916. They left Australia, they served overseas. They joined the 17th Battalion of the 17th Reinforcement. Ernest returned from the war in June 2017. He was medically discharged. He had his chance to come back and live a quiet life and live in safety. He didn't. He re-enlisted in September 1918 and went back to fight again. Stories that are almost unknown to the broader Australian public, stories of bravery and dedication, preparedness to fight and even die for a country that has. So thank you again to everyone who's gathered here today. This is an important opportunity for our young warriors up here, the young men who led our march, to show that they have the same spirit and to understand and uncover the history that has been hidden for too long. Thank you.